Hey everybody, my name is Tom Jones Pharmacist and you are on Tom Jones Pharmacist Live with My Wellness Train, and tonight we have a special edition. We're going to talk to you about the addiction problem in America today. Oh my goodness, unbelievable. I'm a pharmacist. I am a compounding pharmacist, so I like clinical trials. I like to go over all the things that relate to everything medical. And this is shocking. Unbelievable. All right, let's go right straight into it because it's something that you need to know. Drug addiction has reached epidemic levels across the globe. There are 230 million drug users worldwide. Unbelievable numbers. Way back in 2007, there were almost 20 million people using illegal drugs, despite the fact that the American people make only 4% of all the world's population. They still use two-thirds of the illegal drugs worldwide. Nothing is off limits for the 15 to 20% of Americans who have purchased drugs online. And way back several years ago, the National Drug Survey said drug use and health use that 24 million Americans over the age of 11 had used illegal drugs. And that is unbelievable. Every year, drug and alcohol abuse in the United States is over $600 billion. Oh my God. Emergency rooms and non-medical usage of prescription drugs has increased unbelievably over 100%. That's in just the last few years. And patterns like this suggest that drug abuse in America is steadily and significantly on the rise. In fact, the U.S. Senate Committee on Health and Education said that but way back in 2010, 2 million people actually reported using prescription opioids non-medically for the first time. And that's about 5,500 a day. So now we're going to look at some of the things that we want to talk about. And drug deaths in America are rising faster than ever before. There were drug overdose deaths in 2016 over probably 60,000 people. Probably because they don't even know how the numbers are going to come out yet, because it's going to be by the end of the year before you get the complete synopsis of that. And now drug overdose deaths is the leading cause of death among Americans over 50. Now, that's a whole nother subject, because over 50, you would think it's the young folks. Whoa. That's not the case. Actually, 19%. The preliminary reports really can't give you all of the numbers because it actually is higher. There's going to be a higher number because some of the deaths that are attributed to overdoses and drug abuse, and we're going to talk about the other big problem in America today. There's two problems. Actually, drug abuse is the second biggest problem. There's one problem that's actually over drug abuse. And now let's go back and think about we think that maybe even up to 65,000 people died from drug overdoses in 2016. And the peak car or automobile accident reporting mechanism said there was only 50,000, and that was several years ago. So drug deaths really take a long time to certify, or deaths take a long time to certify, because these records from the county and states take a while for it to get into the national database. So, but there is a major problem as far as drug abuse. But let's stop for one moment and talk about the other big problem in America, bigger than drug abuse. It's called alcohol abuse. The number one drug in this whole world that there is a major problem in America is alcohol. Alcohol number one, and drug abuse number two. Hey, wait a minute. This is not even what people are talking about right now, because this is not what anybody wants to hear, because we actually have to think about a lot of different factors that occur in this society of ours. So you really want to think about what's the biggest problem. What's in almost every home? You've got alcohol, and people do take prescriptions, and legally for most medications. But America has some major problems right now, and it starts from the home, and you've got to get this under control. So let's just back up just a moment. We talk about opioid increases in death, but we don't talk about the biggest problem in America today, because it's actually even bigger than opioids, and I've already let the cat out of the bag. It's actually alcohol. So when you talk about heroin being the devil's drug, maybe it's actually alcohol. So we have to examine how we as a society is treating this whole thing about how people start using drugs. And it starts at the home. And you want to try to blame a lot of people for drug abuse and alcohol abuse, but you have to stop and look, number one, at yourself and as a society. Because, drugs are only made by certain pharmaceuticals, but do we actually blame the people who sell the alcohol at our state institutions, or wherever people go to buy alcohol? So I want you to just stop and think. It's a bigger problem in America, and we have a huge problem right now, and we have to, as a society, make amends to how we're doing everything. So we didn't get into this opioid death sentence overnight, but we got into it over a period of time. So we're actually going to go back and talk about this in my webinars, because it does really affect all of us, because society pays for when people are sent to hospitals, and if you're suffering from alcohol addiction, or if you're suffering from drug addiction, it's very costly. Very costly. But when you start talking about people and the problems, and it's only the younger folks, well, it's shocking that senior citizens over 65, of all the hospitalizations, we're talking about 20% of the hospitalizations is due to a drug called alcohol. And that's shocking in itself. But let's go back to our main subject tonight. about the opioid and about all of the drug addiction that we're talking about, and we'll actually kind of leave it right there until the close about the alcohol part of this equation. But let's just think about heroin. That was the devil's drug a while back. People were using heroin. They were buying it on the street illegally, going up to somebody and just purchasing the drug. And now we know that you just can't, if you're a drug addict, you're crazy if you do something like that. It's unbelievably suicidal to go to somebody you don't know and they don't know what they're selling you. They haven't the foggiest clue in the world of what they are selling you. So this whole scenario of drug abuse is just unbelievably complex and difficult and mind-boggling to someone who is actually in the healthcare field, because it's suicidal, number one, to go and purchase something that is prescription only and controlled and as strong as opioids are, to go buy that in the street. And we think about the opioid problem right now. People who were getting the drug on the street, you think of them as being the lower class type people, but they're not really. And this drug addiction knowingly got addicted to medication, opioids, that absolutely would never have gotten addicted to them. But the addiction happens so quickly that they don't even realize that they're addicted. And then you have to try to think of how they're going about getting the medication. They're going doctor to doctor, going out on the street. So it becomes a very serious problem almost immediately. So let's talk about some of the people who have actually gotten involved in prescription medications. And you can, a lot of families have been prescribed opioid prescriptions fairly recently, because if you go to the doctor, over the years, doctors have had to change their attitude as far as writing prescriptions, because at first they were told these drugs should only be given to certain people, cancer patients and etc. But then the medical profession has been taught that we don't want people to suffer in this world. And nobody wants to suffer from pain addiction, from pain that they have legitimate cancer and broken bones and they're elderly and they hurt all the time. So then we have situations in which the doctors, at one time of their career, they were told not to prescribe. And then they were told by their peers to prescribe for these medications, to not let our people suffer in America. And now we realize that probably that was a terrible mistake, because you have so much addiction going on in America and it's killing people left and right. So this whole scenario has to change somewhat. The scenario has to change into the fact that we need to take a step back, and we need to go into the situation in which we figure out how we're going to help these people who have gotten into this addiction state. And these people who manage to escape addiction will do so by taking responsibility for their own plight. After abusing substances, they really have to themselves justify what they have been doing, their accountability, but irrational thinking cannot follow them, and get them to where they need to recover. And recovery begins when the person who is taking that medication takes the responsibility for that situation and decides they want to improve their life. So the word responsible means that an individual has a moral, legal, and mental accountability for something. And it means that people are answerable to what actions and acts that they perform and the consequences. So we have to look at these people. They have to make choices, and before they can really be responsible for themselves, they have to get those negative things out of their life. And the reasons why addicts, and this is really key to this whole situation, who is responsible for that individual who has become the addict? Addicts themselves have to really face their life and take the responsibility for their life and justify the situation of their life, such as when they try to blame others for their substance abuse and everything that's caused by it. Instead of blaming their own actions for the mess in their life, a lot of times they try to pin it on to bad luck, misfortune, and having things occur that is out of their scope of activity. But people then will use the disease theory of addiction as a means to make them be the passive victims. The logic says that no disease means that you should be an addict. The addict must actually get beyond that stage of their life, and just like the alcoholic, the person who needs that next drink in order to be able to function in life, the drug addict is the same way. So they've got to take that responsibility, put it number one in their hearts, and say to themselves, I'm going to conquer this situation. But you've got a drug that's physiologically affecting them, and it's affecting every part of their body. So sometimes the addict will be powerless to actually take this responsibility and put it into their lives. So we need, as a society, to help these individuals and help them get back into their regular lives as best we can. So it's a very complex problem. It's not anybody's fault, but there's a bigger problem out there facing us squarely in the face, and opioid problems are second. The first problem that we have in America today is alcohol. So until we get both of these under control, we will not conquer and be ourselves and be optimal as far as helping other people. We need to get both of those as a society under control, and then, and only then, will we conquer alcohol abuse and opioid abuse. My name is Tom Jones, Pharmacist. I am on tonight with my wellness train, and this is about the addict and the problem in America today. Thank you so much for being here. You heard it right here. See you next time. Good night.